Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick. Oh, wait.
Sorry.
I should probably start.
That makes sense.
Just because it makes sense with the game.
We have giveaways. I want to do the giveaway.
Yeah. No. We'll get to it. Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Taylor.
Taking.
Yes, that is taking. And we are here to talk about the game Ptolemy, P-T-O-L-E-M-Y, Ptolemy, by G. Ono, who did the wonderful Jekyll vs. Hyde. And
We've got giveaways.
I know you wanna get on to the fun.
I mean, look at this. Look at this stack of games.
Can we do one? But we do have to explain the game and the hook, right? Okay, you can talk about the game now. Okay. Well, the hook of Ptolemy, I'll just call it Lemmy. The hook of the game is it's a climbing shedding game, but you only play one card at a time. Okay,
Can I pause
yeah.
you?
Go for it.
Okay, let's do one of them.
Okay, let's do Robo Trick. Okay, this was the recent one, and people were amazing. They said, in theme with Robo Trick, they said some amazing robot movies. But we are going to actually go with, I think the username's PTH777. They had a wonderful favorite movie of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is just a great movie. So yes, reach out. Link in the description for different ways to contact me, but this game is yours. All right.
Yeah?
Okay, you can talk about the game now. Like I was saying, Lemmy Ptolemy is a climbing shedding game where you only play one card at a time, but you're still trying to shed your cards. What you can play is a little restricted. It's very interesting. So I find that the game opens up a little bit once you get to playing, but we should probably go to the table. And
Okay,
I can
I can handle it anymore. I gotta do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, long time ago,
I asked for U Chronicle because it was an old one. What is the person who was known by the most amount of people? And I think out of all the answers, I think it kind of is Queen of England. I got that question, or I got that answer a lot, and I think that's probably is it. I got some good ones, like Michael Jordan. I thought that was an interesting one. But the winner is going to go to Jonah Rockowitz 2742. So Jonah, reach out. I'm going to send you U Chronicle. Oh, and while Taylor is away, let's do another one actually. How about, I have Kings here. Let's do the Kings one. So what Kings was your favorite country, and this is going to go to, a lot of people said Japan, a lot of people said US, a lot of people said Germany. I'll put the stats up here because I think that's super, super interesting. But Kings is going to go to Steve Meeple. Huh? Steve picked the US, and I think the reason Steve picked the US is part of the reason why I love seeing the different reasons is that people will have either, like Germany, where they'll have a favorite game, or Japan, where they have a style. I think Steve picked the US because they kind of pick and choose a lot of different mechanisms. It's kind of this melting pot of sorts, and that's kind of the US in general. So that was really fun to read. So Steve, again, reach out, and oh great, I think Taylor's coming back. Okay. It's not all fun and giveaway games. We do have to finish talking about the hook of the game. So like I said, it's a climbing shedding game where you only play one card, but it's based on the astronomer Ptolemy, who watched the planets go, and the planets kind of move around this chart here. And what's interesting is wherever the planet lands, that's kind of the number that you have to climb on. So super interesting.
Okay, enough.
Okay.
It's our job.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
last
finish
giveaway.
those. Thank you so much to Tanner before we go to the table.
So
Nice to give away the copy of this. Oh, and Kings, thanks to Hirokin, that was so kind. And Robot Rick, thanks again to Ty from Tricky Imports. So, inside job, Tanner came up with a question, which was wonderful, was what was the most suspicious move in a trick-taking game, or not in any game that you've seen, because the winner, who is B. Chris Lieb 21, I think. YouTube's doing this thing where they give like usernames now and not picked names. So it's always like an @ with like your original username, which always has numbers and stuff, and it's really hard to say some of them because a lot of them are just, usernames. Anyway, Chris, I think, I don't know, but they picked a moment which I think is so funny. In Fake Artist Goes to New York, which is like a social deduction drawing game, where you get a word, but if you're the bad or the spy person, you just get an X. And he said that his dad, who got the X, didn't know what the word was that everyone was drawing. And so they were like literally drawing an X both turns, which, if you know the game, is absolutely hilarious. And if you don't know the game, check it out. It is very, very funny. So again, everyone, reach out if you were part of this kind of giveaway shenanigans. Again, linked in the description.
Okay.
And, okay, we can go to the table now.
Let's go to the table. I'll teach you how to play.
Oh, yeah. Before we go to the table, I do want to say, absolutely wild, I was on Codenames with Jeff from the Dragon Tomb. That was absolutely amazing. It is part of like a Twitch stream, which I don't know, I'm not too familiar with Twitch streams and how long they last, but I'll put that in the description if the link is still there, if you wanted to watch that. It's pretty fun. It's a good time. Codenames is always a blast. And it was ran by Tim, who was great, and there's some great people, Hisham and Leonard, and obviously Jeff, who were so much fun to play with. And then also, I was on a podcast with Ryan, and I'll link that also as well. There's 2 episodes so far. Me, I am the 2nd episode, and John, I think it's Cloudis, I never can say this, Cloudis, who's on the 1st episode. Both wonderful listens, and it was great because Ryan had when Ryan asked if I wanted to do the podcast, I was like, yeah, sounds great. And over email, he's like, I have a surprise. I didn't know what the surprise is. I think you're in surprise for if you go listen to it. It is a really fun intro to the podcast. And maybe I just won't spoil it for you. But yeah, definitely check it out. It was great chatting about just the channel and trick-taking games and design, which was really, really fun, and just different topics related to kind of gaming and other media. I love that. I think Ryan's kind of goal with the podcast is a mix of other media and gaming. So like I talk about movies and books and how it relates to gaming and trick-taking and stuff. So that was a fun chat. Anyway, long ramble. I'm so sorry.
We done?
Okay, let Taylor take
Let's go to the table. I'll teach you how to play later.
The deck in Lemmy is a little bit goofy, that's why I have it a little bit sprawled, but the player aid here helps a lot. It's essentially 5 suits of 5 different planets, and it's 5 cards in each. Each suit has an E in it, an eclipse, and then kind of, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 4, so like an increasing amount all the way to Mercury, which is 4, 4, 5, 5. So that's kind of the gist of the deck. Here we have a game of Lemmy set up for the only 2 players, so each player is going to get dealt 11 cards each, and there's going to be 3 left over cut from the hand. The goal of the game is to shed out, so play all your cards, and if you do, you'll get a point, and it's first to 2 points, so kind of best of 3. You're going to put the Eclipse token on the 4 on the daylight side, all the rest of the planets just underneath here. Each player gets the player aid, and then in the first round, the start player is random. Let's say it's this bottom day and night token here. So they are going to lead a card to the trick. When leading, you can play any card you want except for an eclipse that doesn't have the token on the board. So for example here, this Mars eclipse card can't be played because the Mars token isn't on the board yet. For a good actual example, let's say this bottom player played this Jupiter 3, so you're going to find the Jupiter token, and you're going to move it up the number of spaces that say on the value of the card. So 1, 2, 3. Jupiter ended on the 3 here, and so now the trick's going to go to the next player. So they can pass if they want to, but let's say they don't want to pass yet. Sometimes they might be forced to pass, but we're not talking about that yet. What they can play is they can play any planet that hasn't been played yet. They can play an eclipse where there's a planet on the board. Again, they can't play the Jupiter because Jupiter's already been played. It is on the board now, so maybe in a future trick that's possible. Or they can play any card which would leave the planet on a higher number than what was played. So as you can see here, this was left on a 3. So they can't play any of these 2s because Saturn would be left on a lower number. Whenever you play a planet that's off the board, they always come in on the day side. And so let's say they actually play Venus 5. They're going to take Venus and they're going to move it 5 spaces. And the interesting thing is, in the movement, you actually jump any of the occupied spaces. So this would be 1, 2, skip, 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 3, 4, 5. So Venus just landed on the 7, which is important for the kind of climbing-ish part of the game. Now it's down to this player here. Again, they can pass if they want to, but they don't want to pass and they really want to play. So they're looking at their cards here. They can't play any of the Eclipse, again, because either the token's not on the board or it's already been played here. Another Rising Sun player would lead. Let's say, for example, they played the Eclipse. They can now play this because Jupiter is on the board. Whenever you play an Eclipse, it just swaps, boop, the planet. So now Jupiter's on the 4. I just noticed I accidentally swapped the planets of Venus and Mars in the past trick. I am so sorry. As you can see, Venus looks pretty similar, but it's supposed to be up there. Okay, so coming back to this. It is now the bottom player's turn. And so Jupiter ended on 4. So they have to, whatever they play, make sure that the planet lands on 4 or higher. So they can actually play a 4 Venus, which goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Because whenever you go up to the top of the day track, you loop back around. Similarly, if it goes down to the bottom of the night track, it actually loops back up to the day track. So this was valid because Venus hadn't been played yet, and it landed on equal to or higher number. So now when it comes to this player up here, they have to play, whatever planet they play, has to get up here into the top. So maybe they play a 5 Mercury. 1, 2, remembering to skip, 3, 4, 5. So that 7 is pretty scary because the bottom player has to play a pretty good card. They have this 4 of Mars. Notice the Mars hasn't been played yet. They're going to play that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, they can't. Because notice it lands on a 6, which is less than 7. So they can't actually play that. So they are going to pass. So play like this is just going to continue until one player plays their final card. They'll get a point. And again, you're going to restart, play again, and best 2 out of 3 wins. One thing to note is you can only play 1 Eclipse card per cycle. So this and this could never happen. The lead player in the following rounds is the player who won the previous round. And that's how to play Lemmy.
So that is Ptolemy, I believe. It's probably like pterodactyl, right? Where the PT is just the T. It is a very interesting game. So first off, I love Jekyll vs. Hyde. I think Gionel's other game that is really out there is wonderful, absolutely spectacular. And the art on here is gorgeous. I think just playing the game itself, you just realize just how wonderful it looks and how the cards look and how the kind of different planet art is just so clean and but still so colorful, and yeah, it looks absolutely amazing. My only gripe, and you might have noticed this if you watched the full playthrough, but I confused Mars and Venus a lot in my games of this game. It's just, you know, you see red squiggle planet and you get kind of confused. Or maybe I just get kind of confused. But I think that was a tough part of the production, I think was the word I was looking for. But yeah, other than that, I think the production's mostly good. I like this mat. It feels really nice. The cards feel nice. They are very thin. They're like pretty much paper. It's almost like playing with business cards, but they're like linen business cards. It's bizarre how nice they are, but then very thin they are. I didn't personally mind it just because, you know, it's a 15 card deck, and how I shuffle, funny enough, is kind of like I just let a few fall and then move it to the front. A few fall, a few to the front, a few to the front. Or I do like very light, you know, riffle. But other than that, yeah, mostly a pretty good production, and I love the card backs. Look how pretty that is. Just a very stark night sky. But to the gameplay, it's interesting to have a climbing shading game where you only play one card. It feels like a trick-taking game in so many ways. It feels almost like a must-not-follow trick-taking game, just because you always play one card. You can't play a planet that's already out there, so that's must-not-follow. So it's interesting that in the gameplay, feels so much like a trick taker, but in the goal, it's a climbing shedding game. The cool thing, because, you know, it's so funny to be like, oh, it's a climbing shedding game where you only have singles. If there wasn't kind of like a hook beyond that, it'd be very simple, right? You're just playing single, 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 single. I think the must not follow restriction is interesting, but the climbing, having to work off of this, you know, up and then down is super clever. I really like that touch, that you can time going up with a certain planet and then curving a little bit and then still being able to come all the way back down and curve up on another planet and kind of set yourself up for some interesting plays. Especially,
I think if this wasn't part of it, I think the game would be incredibly simple, maybe, or just like much less to it. But the Eclipse cards are huge. Part of the strategy is, I think you look at your hand and you're like, well, I have to time the Eclipse cards because you can only play one Eclipse per cycle, per, trick. And since it's a climbing shitting game, like if this was my hand right here, where I had 2 Eclipses in it, I know I at least have to play 2 cycles or 2 tricks, just because I can't play multiple Eclipse. And then on top of that, you look at the suits, right? And you have 2 Jupiter. So you at least have to play 2 cycles because of the Jupiter. So there's some interesting planning of the hand. I think a climbing shitting game separates itself from a trick-taking game because of that planning of the hand, the pacing of it all, when to win, when to pass, and that's totally here in this game. I think it is at the start a little bit more tactical. I think for the most part you're kind of just playing off of what you can do. I think maybe throughout the whole game you are playing off what you can do a lot, but there are really interesting moves, especially with the Eclipse, especially with trying to handle what you're dealt. Like if you're dealt a lot of one planet, you're restricted in the climbing, then also the planets, then also how many Eclipse there are. And I think that the fact that you can only lead singles, and that's already a restriction, it feels like an interesting mix of super restricted, but since you can play any planet at the start, that the gameplay at the start of a trick feels more open than it does at the back half of the trick. And I think that helps because at the start of the hand it also feels more open than it does at the back part of the hand. You're also just into like some kind of flow that gets a little bit restricted near the end of the hand. I think the Eclipse token and the Eclipse play is huge. Timing that, playing off of that, almost sometimes moving it to where you want it to be for the next cycle is really interesting. But overall, I will say, although I'm kind of pontificating about all the interesting moves you can do in the game, I do think it's lighter. I do think it is more tactical. Oftentimes you're sitting there and you're like, what can I do? More than what do I want to do? And I think that's a mix of the climbing part of the game, not playing the same planet, and the Eclipse part of the game. So oftentimes I think I will look at my hand and be like, at the start of a trick, or at the start of, especially if you're leading, at the start of a hand being like, oh, I can do a fair amount. But I think near the end of the hand, near the end of the trick, you pretty much are doing like a lot of calculation just to be like, oh, I can't play, or I can play one card. And since it's a shitting game, you're like, I guess I'll play that one card. So I think this is interesting. It has some fun, cool moments. I think you can set yourself up for some cool things. But overall, I think it's maybe a bit of a lighter climbing shitting game that uses cool mechanics in interesting ways, and that has its own avenue of strategy to look into. But I do think it is maybe lighter, maybe more like ambient abyssal or Planet E cute kind of vibes of, okay, this is what I can play right now. Is that beneficial for me? Pass or not? If it is, just play it. Overall though, I had a great time with it. I think there's something kind of whimsical to it and something so smart about this track that just goes up and down, and trying to time your planets for when they're the strongest. Or sometimes maybe you want to lead low because you want a different planet that you have in your hand later on in the trick to be high, and for you to hit that 6 or 7 at the end, or set up the Eclipse for like a later situation. So it's cool. It definitely packs a fun little punch in Ptolemy. It's Ptolemy, probably? I don't know why I'm having so hard. This P is throwing me for a loop. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and definitely check this out. I think Geonol is doing shipping. I'll probably include also a link in the description of how to get it. I think they're doing international shipping now. And this may be also at Spiel, which is coming up. So yeah, if this does sound fun, definitely check it out. Geonol is so rad, and I think they have another design that's coming out that also sounds super interesting. But such a fun designer to watch. I think they do very Taiki Shinzawa-ish, where it's a really cool concept that you're like, whoa, how does that work? And it works well. And it's like this kind of
bite-sized, fascinating punch of a game very often. So anyway, definitely check it out. Jonah's great, and thanks so much for watching. See ya.